So we've all heard the mortgage world is coming to an end on October 3rd. We've heard things like we have loan Armageddon coming and the end of the world. We're never going to be able to close real estate transactions on time ever again. It's going to be a disaster. Listen, we've all been in business long enough to know that changes do come and changes go. And the world never ends, okay? The best thing we can do is just stay calm, bob and weave, because you know as well as anyone else, these homes, they don't grow feet and they don't run away. So if we don't close today, we'll close tomorrow. The house is still gonna be there. We're gonna get real technical here because acronyms within real estate and mortgage are just so awesome and they just sum everything up in the smallest words possible. So the topic for today is TRID. That's TRID. So I've had things like TRED, TRED, trash, trigger, triumphant. Just because it begins with a T doesn't mean that that's what the whole new process is about. So it's TRID, T-R-I-D, a wonderful acronym. And what that means is TILA RESPA Integrated Disclosure. Now, that's gonna get confusing for you because that has acronyms within acronyms. So the two acronyms there that are built into TILA is Truth and Lending Act and RESPA, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. In a nutshell, this means we're gonna change the way we currently close loans. Currently, a lot of our fire drills and attention and finalization of loan documents and real estate contracts all occur on the day of closing or a day before closing. As lenders, sometimes we can navigate through these last-minute changes so that we can accommodate all the parties involved. Here are the details of the process and important things to take away. I'm gonna make this really simple. We're dealing with 3 T's, okay? The title insurance cost is going to go up because the title industry feels there's going to be a lot of things they need to comply with and time constraints with the new regulation. So the first T is title insurance cost. And in some areas, title insurance cost, attorney's fees, they have different closing procedures. So the attorney's cost, title insurance is one and the same thing. The second T is 3 days. The buyer must receive the closing statement 3 days prior to closing. The borrower will not be able to waive this 3-day waiting period, not counting Sunday. So here's an example of how this works. Another wonderful acronym for you is a CD. The CD is the closing document, which is gonna replace the HUD, which is another acronym. If by chance the CD, closing document, is sent on, let's say, Thursday, the loan technically cannot close until the following week, Tuesday. That means the client would receive the CD Thursday. You then have Friday, Saturday, and Monday, which is 3 days. Then on the 4th day, the client can close, which would be Tuesday. They must have the CD, the closing disclosure, in their little hands for a minimum of 3 days. This does not mean that the closing package itself goes to the attorney's office or title company 3 days prior to closing. That's not how it works. The client must give the lender receipt of the closing statement, the closing disclosure. They must acknowledge it and they must agree to it. Once the lender has that, then the lender can send the closing package to the attorney. So here could be a potential pitfall. If the client is not proactive and they drag their feet and take 3 days to send or acknowledge the information back to the lender, then guess what? A new 3-day waiting period would take effect. So, the third T, let's jump into the last and final one, is time frame. It's stunning if you look at the CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, another acronym. I have a cliff note at the end of this video that's gonna be a little booklet on acronyms so that you don't even have to write this down. So, the CFPB, which is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, they actually have a theoretical timeline on when the application is taken on October 3rd and closes at the end of November. This is not what we expect as a true timeline. However, going into this initially up front, I would say the new common closing time frame would be at least a minimum of 60 days versus the 30 to 40 days. So I think the biggest takeaway would be please set a longer expectation on the closing timeframes with your consumer. The value of a preferred lender is going to be huge. The referral process up front needs some improvement. You need to probably change the way you're referring the clients to the lender up front to make sure that they connect much sooner so that the lender can get a head start on this loan process. Currently, the National Association of Realtors is looking at potentially changing real estate contracts to protect the buyer from any delays in the closing date. Everything going on right now is about how to make it easier for the buyer, how to make buying a home and borrowing money in the best interest of the consumer. I kind of disagree a little bit there. I think that buying a home and borrowing $200,000 to $400,000 should not be like we're in the grocery store and it's like a box of Lucky Charms, some peanut butter, some jelly, and $300,000, and we're just gonna go check out. We should really think about what it is we're doing and probably slow some things down, but not be so extreme with some of this stuff. I would suggest when you write these contracts with these 30-day closings or quick closings, I would suggest that you reword it to say closings not to exceed 60 days. Some of the common questions we will have is how do we handle back-to-back closings? Well, we'll handle them just fine. You could still have funding conditions, however, you cannot have any changes to the APR at closing. This means a funding condition would provide the documentation for the previous home showing it was sold, and we will have that from the new acronym, CD, closing disclosure on the previous closing. The customer will have that 3 days prior to closing, so that should not be an issue. Another question, who prepares the CD? This is a great question to talk about with your current lending partners because it can vary from one lender to the next. We are going to prepare the CD ourselves. This means it is absolutely critical that the closing attorney submits at a minimum of 5 days prior to closing a complete copy of all the fees. That would be commissions, the purchase price, seller information, payoffs, taxes, info that the seller is going to be providing to the attorney. So as a seller or as a real estate agent, you need to be proactive well in advance. You cannot show up at closing with, oh, here's an inspection. Oh, this was the wrong purchase price because there was a change order. All of that stuff needs to happen a minimum of 5 days prior to closing so that we, as the lender, can prepare the closing disclosure and send it time-stamped to the consumer. Also, keep in mind, a lot of the little rules around this new closing procedure have been incorporated into this loan closing process for several years now. It's just these rules are being reiterated, and it might seem like, uh-oh, another change, but it's really not. The biggest takeaway is setting proper expectations with your clients, such as you're gonna hit a brick wall. You're gonna hit a brick wall so hard you might break your neck. Just kidding. At any rate, it will be a learning curve for everyone as we go through the integration. So start speaking with your customers now up front by letting them know that there could be potentially delays. They're much more likely to hit a brick wall and be happy if you tell them that you're on your way to hitting a brick wall. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. The producer's telling me close it, close it, close it, and I'm telling him not with TRID. But at any rate, have a great day. So, is that the end of it? Oh, I was waiting for a close. There was no closing.
What? No closing? That's a good year.
That's right. I was waiting for the close. It's not going to close. That was pretty funny, actually.